A lot of discussion has been regarding parking. Has the existing parking lot been reconfigured? Will that be reconfigured as part of all of this?
There's several steps to the reconfiguration. The most significant, of course, is building the first structure, which both eliminates current ground parking, reallocates spaces, as well as other land spaces around the campus to both meet the code and maximize available parking. But it'll all occur after approval of this process.
So are there more ground level parking spaces that will be available once it's been reconfigured? It's a really funky parking lot. To me, it seems like.
Thank you very much, yes.
Wipe it clean and start over again. I'm a bad parker, so that's part of my problem.
All right, please use our valet parking.
Thank you.
Thank you. The answer is yes, but I don't want to mislead here. The added surface parking is small in number and nowhere really adds to the current parking in and of itself of any significant amount. The structure has to be built to really solve the parking problems. The first structure is in excess of both current demand and required demand for the first medical office building and substantially meets the requirements for the addition to the hospital. It's a major need, and of course the heliport on top is also a major need. So it will, for all practical reasons, with any capability we have of projecting that, solve all of the parking issues before anything else is built. Of course, we'll have other construction after that that'll be somewhat disruptive, but with the parking structure on campus, the flexibility is increased very significantly.
I have two other parking questions, and this keeps coming up about the paid parking.
Yes.
Am I clear in that there will not be paid parking unless we have a separate vote that says we would want paid parking? Have we said we wanted paid parking? Okay, I didn't hear that either.
No,
okay, so at this point there is no paid parking.
This approval process does not allow it, and to the extent it is needed to both manage the parking, we would have to come back under a separate process with your approval.
Okay, and then it's the question that keeps coming up, and I've asked staff, and I'm going to throw it out there. This is the big thing. Is there enough parking in this plan?
Yeah.
Is this parking sufficient for the amount of building that is proposed and the amount of office space?
I think you're going to ask the staff that. I can say with great confidence it is, based on the studies that have been done and the known combined uses we gain to a pretty rich code, which we're going to adopt as part of this, not retaining the old code, which is less parking than may be required today, but adopting the city's code of today for the entire campus gives me great assurance for that.
Oh.
Go ahead. Off now. There we go. This outpatient operating rooms is definitely a concern, I think, for the council as well as everyone else. I don't know if you can or a doctor. We talk about outpatient operating room.
Right.
Can you list surgeries that are done in an outpatient operating room? Sure. That 10 years, 15 years, 20 years ago may have been done in an inpatient building that today are considered outpatient?
We could do that in a supplemental memorandum.
Please.
We would be happy to do that. The other thing that's most interesting to try to project forward, for example, we have quite a capability today with the skills of the neurosurgeons to do a lot of spine surgery. The predictions in the field is 75% of the spine surgery will be outpatient within the next 5 years. So it's a current inpatient demand of significant time. And because of the new techniques in surgery and so on, the majority of that's going to be done on an outpatient basis.
Anything further on your?
No, I'd be happy to just respond to questions, but I would prefer to follow up other issues or that have been brought forward tonight. So thank you very much for your time.
Same here, sir. Thank you very much. I want to afford city staff. Are there any comments that you might wish to make, Ken, or any of our staff members?
You know, there is one comment that I would like to make, and it's just really one of reassurance, because there keeps coming back the comment that there is a threat of eminent domain and that some people may lose their homes. That is absolutely not the case. The realignment that's being done on McBean takes away that need. The development agreement precludes that potential. So that, I don't know how to say it more strongly. There will be no eminent domain, and there is no basis for a need for eminent domain based on the redesign that's been done for this project.
Paul, one of the statements that was made was there's eminent domain listed in state documents which could then turn around and be used in this project. Can you address that?
I think the city attorney is prepared to address that.
Yes, I think if I heard the comment correctly, there was a reference to eminent domain in the conditions of approval. I believe the condition of approval that's being referred to is a standard condition of approval, which simply says that in the event that eminent domain is necessary to acquire property for public improvements that are conditioned to be built, the developer agrees that they're going to reimburse the city for those costs. It's a standard condition of approval. It's in all projects. With respect to the development agreement specifically prohibits residential eminent domain. The only reason it uses the qualifier residential is there were two instances that were being looked at by staff as to where eminent domain might have a potential, and I don't know as I sit here today whether those have been closed off. One was at the intersection of Valencia and McBean, and that would obviously not be a residential acquisition. There are some traffic improvements that are called for there, and staff was confirming whether or not any right-of-way would be needed at Valencia and McBean based on the traffic improvements that need to be built there. And then the second possibility was if there was a realignment of McBean, whether or not any additional sewer easements would be needed from the adjacent medical building site. So if those two items can be clarified in the next few weeks, it may be that we can eliminate any reference to eminent domain in the document entirely. Those are the only two anticipated locations where there might be some right-of-way needed.
I think it's important again to note that the city, through this process, will not be taking anybody's homes as a result of this project. So that's clearly been an issue that's been of great concern. It was been raised. We have looked at it very carefully and have removed that need and precluded it through the development agreement process.
Paul, could you make comment about some concerns by the public having to do with the B&T fees and a gift of excess of $2 million to GNL?
Yes, I can. As a matter of fact, the changes in the B&T district will give the hospital credit for about $300,000 worth of street improvements that will be required as a part of this project. The B&T fees, however, are going up. The hospital's B&T fees will go up from $450,000 to over $750,000. And in addition to that, above and beyond that, the city, through the development agreement, is requiring the hospital to contribute an additional $500,000. So, yes, they do get a credit. It's $300,000. However, their fees will go up, and they will be required to contribute $500,000 over and above that.
Okay, now you indicated the hospital. What about GNL Realty?
Well, that's the project itself.
Okay. Council?
I do. I have a couple more questions for Paul. There was mentioned a most favored nation clause agreement. Is anything being given to GNL that is different from any other developer for any other project?
You know, that every development agreement has different provisions and different requirements. At this point, without studying some specific issues or having some more specifics provided to us, I am unaware of any provision in this development agreement that would give any other development agreement benefits that they do not already have. I would certainly welcome any specific information with that regard. We will definitely research it, but at this point, I am not aware of anything that would result in the outcome that was suggested in the comments earlier today. Joe, Joe Montez, who is our city attorney, who has drafted this document or who has at least reviewed this document on behalf of the city, you may have some additional comments in that regard.
Yeah, in the intervening time between now and your next meeting, we will certainly review the city's outstanding development agreements to identify any that have a most favored nations clause, as well as what impact this agreement would have on those. And we'll be able to report back to you on that at your next meeting.
Thank you.
Okay. I have some other questions regarding the documents. Do you want me to just go through those, or do you want me to wait?
Let's get it, we'll wait for when.
Okay, well, there you go. Okay. Let me just kind of, I just want to assure the public out there that this is the last EIR. This is the development agreement. This is the June EIR, and it had all kinds of sticky notes on here, and I took them off to put them in the new ones. This is all material with all the little sticky notes that I've looked at, and I can assure you that I am going through these documents as carefully as I can to have all my questions answered. These are all the sticky notes for our agenda item. So I'd like to kind of just go through some things and ask you questions. Okay. In the development agreement here, under, this is just the summary, but under sequencing of improvements, section 4.7.1, regarding timing, these numbers, this is really hard to follow here. It's under section 4.7.1, but as you go down the page and you go clear down to the issuance of a building permit for medical office building 3, and it requires the following. It says foundations for the inpatient building are to be substantially complete. Either vertical steel rebar must be in place for the first structural column section, or if a steel structural frame is to be used, the first vertical steel column section must be in place. Now, I asked how much of the building is actually, or the foundation and the rebar is actually done, and I was told it's actually quite a bit. And there would be an illustration here that would kind of show how much of that building would need to be completed before they could, the inpatient building, before they could pull a permit for medical office building 3, because that seems to be a concern. Is there some information for me on that, or will you be getting that to me?
We do not have an illustration this evening that would show how much of the building had been done, but we can provide that at the next meeting, in addition to an itemization of what steps would have had to be undertaken with respect to the inpatient building prior to that time as well.
Okay, and if it's possible to get it to me before, sometime before the next meeting, just so I could look at it. I would also like to suggest that under Certificate of Occupancy for Medical Office Building 3, that if at all possible, you add a number 4 and have it say, inpatient building must be complete and ready for occupancy.
Marcia, you'd indicated you have a number of those stickies.
Yes.
I was wondering if some of those could be answered by your meeting with staff, office
Sure.
basis or something, rather than all of it here tonight.
Okay, not a problem. I just kind of want it in the record, though. So let me just go a little bit further.
Very well.
Sorry, but, you know, that's what we're here to do tonight, right? Okay. In looking at this, there's different areas where you mention mitigations. And I'm wondering if there is a list somewhere that I didn't see of the total mitigations for this project for the surrounding neighborhood.
Councilmember McLean, the mitigation measures are included in the executive summary of the September 2008 revised draft DIR. They were also in your agenda report. Specifically, a mitigation monitoring and reporting program will be developed and incorporated into the final EIR, which will be brought back to the City Council before making a final determination.
Okay, would that include, for instance, like regarding noise, starting time? Like, for instance, in most city times, I think it's what, 7 a.m.? But the problem is that if it's at 7 a.m., then the trucks start coming with their backing up little dings and bells at 6:30 a.m. And I think if the residents are going to have to go through 10 or 15 years of construction, that we need to clarify that.
Absolutely. We just to clarify, we made the construction hour provision more stringent than the typical noise ordinance time periods.
Okay, because I would be concerned also about addressing the droning of the air conditioning units. I think I heard that those are all going to be encased in the building itself so that they're not sitting on the roof. Is that correct? And I just want to mention that in here, it says alternative 2, MOBs 1 and 2, the inpatient building and supporting facilities was selected as the environmentally superior alternative to the proposed project due to less construction impacts, use of fewer natural resources, less traffic, etc. I don't have a whole bunch more, okay? In talking again, let's see, in section 4.7.1, timing of construction project improvements, when you go down to certificate of occupancy for medical office building 2, when you talk about number 5, written documentation that 20% of MOB's 2 leasable space has been leased to Henry Mayo New Home Memorial Hospital for Centers of Excellence or other hospital-related uses. I think I stated clear back in 2007 when we had our last meeting that I didn't think 20% guarantee was enough, and I think, Roger, you said you were going to look at that. But it's still here as 20%. So I would like to have that addressed. There was one portion in section 5.1 and 5.2 where it talks about the uses for the medical office buildings. However, it states that all the hospital has to do is opt out with a letter so that they can change that, the types of uses that we have listed as being acceptable. In other words, not so many dentist office, not so many optometrist office, but actual uses that the hospital will use in these medical office buildings. I have a concern about that language. Okay, I think that's all I need to ask right now.
Frank, you had something more?
I just wanted to make a quick comment. There were a few speakers that came forward tonight, specifically stating, based on my silence last time, I guess what's frustrating is, for myself, I've been very clear from the beginning that I'm trying to balance, I think it was Ms. Clough that stated, our responsibility to protect constituents. And for a council member, I know my responsibility not only is to that neighborhood which I live within blocks of the hospital, but also to constituents, which are the 200,000 people, also community-wide. I know as an elected official, since I've sat in this dais during this hospital planning period, I specifically have been very clear that I oppose no paid gated parking, as well as the rest of the council members. I agreed with the community around the hospital to relocate MOB1 and to go from 4 to 3 stories. I agree wholeheartedly that parking structure 4 should be subterranean. I was adamant that no home should be ever taken by eminent domain, as rest of the council stated. I agree with MOB2 being relocated. Absolutely agree with the council that we need to tie commercial development to actual building of hospital beds, and that this complex is restricted to medical purposes only. I agree that there's almost 243,000 square feet eliminated from this, because I believe it was the young lady, Ms. Newhall, that mentioned it's not appropriate for this size, and so we've almost decreased it by 30,000 square feet. Those residents who came forward tonight, there are great issues that you brought up, and I agree we need to look, where's construction and parking going to be? Where are we going to, are there enough operating rooms? What are the uses outside in those commercial buildings? And so I know 2 weeks ago, the mayor changed my mind on the vote, and my mind's always open, but I want to hear from residents how to make this the best healthcare facility for our community. And so when I hear people coming up and asking to recuse, I didn't get elected not to have an opinion. I would be embarrassed to serve if you didn't ask me my opinion. And I think it's dangerous when people say, when someone runs for office, I couldn't imagine asking Senator McCain or Senator Obama, give your opinion on any number of topics, the banking crisis, the Iraq war, and then turn around when they're elected and say, we're going to sue you. You're too opinionated. I've only been in support of the neighborhood residents and your concerns, but also for those 200,000 residents. The only thing that I've disagreed with is an area of definition, and I've been adamant about that area of definition. I want to make clear tonight. People talk about commercial versus hospital beds, and that's the only thing that I can say that I have been forthright and very opinionated about, that commercial is not Walmart. Commercial is not non-medical purposes. I've always been clear that commercial purposes are the brains, the doctors, but they're also the MRI machines. They're also the outpatient care, physical therapists, the neurosurgeons, the people we're trying to attract. So if those who came in opposition tonight specifically for me to recuse myself, I'm an elected official. I hear you out. I've agreed with, I think, 90% of what you guys have come forward with adamantly. And to say that you want elected member recused over the 10% you don't agree, feels a little disingenuous. If you, during the public comment, would like to continue giving us new things, I'm more than willing to listen and to make this master plan the best it can be. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments by, yes, Lori?
I have a question regarding, and I don't know if it's a CEQA issue, but it's the greenhouse gas. In looking at the EIR, I'm struggling with that. We're looking at the mitigations and what we can and can't address, and the whole issue of the global climate change because of the cars on the road. That makes sense to me. But if it's residents who live here who are seeking medical care, they're going to have to go somewhere to seek it. So is that addressed in the EIR? I'm not a scientist, but I'm guessing that the greenhouse gas global emission is going to be a lot worse if you're driving from Saugus to Tarzana than it is through town, but is that somehow addressed, or this is only about this exact location?
Councilmember Ender, staff took a very conservative approach when looking at the issues of global climate change and greenhouse gas emissions. And from a cumulative standpoint, we did feel that it was appropriate to consider a project of this scale in our city to have significant impacts in that respect. But from a practical standpoint, you're absolutely correct. A very strong argument can be made that this project actually promotes a number of sustainable elements in building a facility in an area that is established, that is urbanized, that does not require lands that are in greenfield condition to be converted to an urban use. So you can really make that argument, but we did take a very conservative approach.
And that is exactly correct. The issue at hand is an extremely new issue in terms of environmental law, and therefore we chose to err on the side of being conservative. In reality, by providing, for example, medical offices in closer proximity to hospital facilities, you're driving less. By providing services close into the neighborhood, you're potentially driving less. But again, it's in part any facility of this size anywhere in the community, we would have likely included the same SOC simply because this is an absolutely new area of the law, and we chose to take the conservative
So, I mean,
approach.
within the scope of this EIR, it's just addressing these immediate things, because really the same thing would apply to traffic. You know, and I hear you, Mrs. Thomas was mentioning the water main and, you know, all that stuff. Same issue would apply to traffic leaving the Santa Clarita Valley, but that's not addressed, right? Okay, so that was one thing I kept looking for, especially in looking at the alternatives. The alternatives to doing nothing isn't really better for the environment because everybody's got to go someplace else. It might be better for the environment right there, but that seems kind of limiting. You know, the only other thing I wanted to say, Mayor, if you don't mind, I think there must have been about 50 people that spoke tonight, and I so appreciate everybody coming. Great points, lots of things to think about. I'm going to have 50 more questions. I won't do it tonight, I promise. And I think the thing we all have in common, everybody seems to want a hospital expansion in one way, shape, or form, and I'm in agreement with that. And the only thing is I don't know what this is going to look like. I'm not ready to say yes, no. We still have some work to do, and I appreciate everybody coming and bringing up all these things. We are getting closer, and we're doing it working together. So rather than an adversarial thing, I appreciate all these points of view, and I hope that we will get a copy. I scribbled as much as I could, but I certainly would love to see all of the verbal comments in written form as we go through this. I think that will be extremely helpful.
Mr.
Mayor, I just have one more question I'd like to ask.
Excuse me.
I would just like to know whether I would be able to have a site tour of the houses on top of the hill overlooking the hospital. I don't know if any of the other council members are interested, but I would love to just be able to go up there and take a look if the residents would allow from there where they're going to be affected by this hospital.
Thank you.
Did you?
You had something?
I think the city attorney had a comment.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I thought it might be appropriate to briefly review the law relating to bias. The basic rule is that due process requires in a quasi-judicial proceeding that the decision maker be fair and impartial. This rule, however, does not preclude holding opinions, philosophies, or strong feelings about issues or specific projects. It also does not proscribe expression of views about matters of importance in the community, particularly during an election campaign. A council member who receives campaign contributions from an applicant that seeks a quasi-judicial land use decision from the city and who is the appellant that brings the matter before the city council for review is not automatically disqualified from participating due to bias or prejudgment. There are extensive cases that support these principles that I think that council should be aware of.
Thank you, Carl. Appreciate that. If there is nothing further, we will, I'm sorry, Lorraine.
I'd like to finish up, and then maybe we'll be able to conclude. I would appreciate everybody coming. I think it's very helpful to get the comments from the public. There seems to be still a lot of confusion over issues that pertaining in the document. So I would like to ask that we address literally point by point all questions and concerns that have been raised in the EIR, that we address all the parking that will be available in the future after construction, as well as what will be available during the construction period. Make clear point by point on each issue that has been raised so that we can eliminate further confusion. For instance, the issue, we've talked about it again, whether it's eminent domain or not. There is not, but that seems to be of a concern. I would like to make sure that all oral comments that were made and presented tonight here are put into the record and that are specifically answered in the final EIR. And I think there is a lot of confusion about the phasing steps of the project, what happens when, and what's guaranteed, and what the steps are in each project. So I want to make sure that clearly that is defined. And down to the cost of the state permits, from my understanding, is very high. So that's probably something the hospital should have prepared for the next meeting so that people are aware that when they get into that point, that steps, that there is clearly a huge financial commitment. I also would like to know, for my own concern, in the future when the inpatient building is built, where the MRI unit will be located, and hopefully it will be in the main building. I think that the community has raised a lot of good concerns that they have, and I think that the real job here at this point is to finalize all of the information that's been presented and all the questions raised and get it into a document where literally everybody can look at it and say, okay, there is the answer. And I'm hoping that staff has everything in the record that we can clearly go point by point and make sure that we have covered every single concern that has been raised here tonight. And now I'll just let it go so that we can move on.
Thank you. We will continue the public hearing on this item until November the 19th, which will be a special
Mr. Mayor, it
meeting.
would be appropriate for, to consider a motion to continue the
Very well.
public hearing, open public hearing, to November 19th, 2008, a special meeting at 6 p.m.
I will so move.
Second.
Roll call.
Councilmember West,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ferry,
Yes.
Councilmember McLean,
Yes.
Councilmember Ender,
Yes.
Mayor Keller.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor,
Motion
there's also a
carries.
subparagraph B, recommended action, that should be considered by the council.
Very well. Is there a motion on the paragraph B?
So moved?
Second.
Roll call.
Mayor Pro Tem Ferry,
I apologize. My son just emailed me and he caught me off guard. So where are we at? He wants to know when I'm going to be home. My 14-year-old son's watching right now. So
I think it's a motion for the base, for the remainder of the recommended action.
yes.
Councilmember McLean,
Yes.
Councilmember Ender,
Yes.
Councilmember West, Mayor Keller.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. We'll move on now to public participation. Do we have any public participation? Thank you. I'm going to hold off about 1 minute for the room to clear for those that wish to leave.
Want to break for 5 minutes, just to let it clear?
We have a couple speakers.
Oh, okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you will, we'll ask you to go ahead and move outside the door so we can continue our meeting. We have 3 speakers. I have Cam Noltmeyer, followed by Annette Lucas, followed by Valerie Thomas. Ms. Noltmeyer?
Cam Noltmeyer, speaking for myself. Also, I have a question with regard to the development agreement. There were changes presented tonight. Now, we had received correspondence from city staff that there were no changes in the development agreement or the draft conditions of approval, that they had not changed from the time between June and August of 2008. Come down here tonight and you're listing a whole list of changes to the development agreement. I'm requesting those and I would like to be able to pick them up tomorrow. I also just have a comment because I wasn't able to speak for myself during that time. I moved here to be in a planned community. That's what I live in, a planned community. And there has been complete disregard for the people. And the vicious statements I heard this evening from some of those that are supporting the so-called hospital expansion. Obviously, they don't bother to read any of the information that is presented. I showed you the stack of things that I have that we're going through and will be presenting comments on. And when you go through that, you will see that what's granted in one place is taken away in another. There's no guarantees at all for this public in that development agreement. And that is why the Planning Commission denied it. There is nothing there that benefits, a lot that benefits GNL. That is very obvious. And I know these comments won't be included because they're not under the public hearing. But I was very distressed at the last public hearing you had on the hospital. And I believe at that time, Marcia McLean was the mayor. And in the middle of that public hearing, you stopped in the middle of the public hearing and said, 20-minute recess, and we're going to come out here and resolve this. And you know who you talked to? You talked to Hunt Brawley, Scott Wilkes, Jeff Lambert, Arthur Sohikian, the lobbyists for GNL and for the hospital. That's who you talked to. So if the people that are coming up here that are so assaulted by the doctors that were present, you never have listened to us, and you continue not to listen to us.
Thank you.
I talked to David Ghani.
Our next speaker is Annette Lucas.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council, and City Manager Ken Polskamp. My name is Annette Lucas, and I'm speaking tonight regarding the public comment period being moved to the end of the agenda. First, let me say that I've looked up 9 surrounding cities and their agenda layouts. They are the City of Beverly Hills, the City of Coronado, the City of Goleta, the City of San Fernando, the City of Schaefer, the City of San Dimas, the City of Simi Valley, the City of South El Monte, and the City of South Pasadena. These city councils are all following the City of Santa Clarita's previous agenda format, and that the public speaking is located near the beginning of the City Council meeting or agenda. And the time limit is set for 3 minutes. One solution that the City of Santa Clarita has regarding the late hours of City Council meetings, and I quote, is the policy of the City Council that upon reaching 11:30 p.m., the City Council will not address any new agenda items. Should the City Council continue to address an in-progress agenda item past 12 midnight, the following motion is in order. Move the City Council meeting tonight may be extended beyond the midnight deadline to conclude the item in progress or conduct a special district's business. And in their municipal code, it's section 2-1.106. Please do not limit your constituents' concerns by keeping the public comment period at the end of the city council meetings. This will only limit the ability of the public to be actively involved in the due process of our city government. Thank you.
Thank you, Annette. Our next speaker is Val Thomas, followed by Tim Ben Boydson.
Good evening again. According to the city's website, Santa Clarita has a single redevelopment agency encompassing nearly 1,000 acres. There is also a single redevelopment committee to deliberate issues and advise the city council. At the September meeting of the Newhall Redevelopment Committee, I requested copies of the minutes from all the 2008 meetings, and I received them in a timely manner. I saw Councilmember McLean's comments on the MRF were duly noted in the March minutes. But I was surprised to see that no mention was made of Councilmember West, who owns nearly 9 acres of property in the area covered by the redevelopment agency. Ms. West has attended more than one NRC meeting this year and has addressed the committee in regard to prioritizing the library ahead of the streetscape. Now, Ms. West was quoted in the Signal that she acted in accord with City Attorney Carl Newton's advice. But expunging the record of her remarks and her attendance on more than one occasion raises questions about their propriety. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim Ben Boyston.
Mayor Keller, City Council members, and City Manager Ken Pulskamp, citizens of Santa Clarita. I am former Council Member Tim Ben Boydson. I would like to address 2 issues this evening. The first is the moving of the public comment from the front of the meeting to the end. An email from the city indicated that Mr. Pulskamp made this decision. I'm asking the council to move the comment period back to the beginning and perhaps add one at the end. If it's good enough for Palmdale, it's the least that we can do. I know that the reason is because we have had a resurgence of citizen participation. And how can that be a bad thing? The lament is always, why is there so much apathy? And now that the citizens are getting involved, you want to make it harder for them to do so. If you're concerned about us getting to the agenda in a timely fashion, how about moving council comments and awards to the city to the end of the meeting as well? And that would save nearly an hour at most council meetings. Second item is about the One Valley, One Vision and how the future specific plan areas are a part of that. Now, within 48 hours of my statements to the council on this issue at the last council meeting, wherein I said that parking lots could be used as open space or parkland, the city website issues a denial, which I will read from. Parking lots in open space, not in Santa Clarita. Yes or no, are developers allowed to count parking lots as parkland and open space in the city of Santa Clarita within specific plan areas? Answer, no. But then in this same article on your website, it says right here from your code, plazas, driveways, horse trails, bike trails, open parking lots offered for dedication may be made at the time of the specific plan consideration as a means of meeting requirements for open space and park dedication requirements. Now, you go on to say that you're not suggesting that commercial or residential parking could be used as a means to meet provided required open space. Well, if you want to preclude it, then why don't we just preclude it in the specific plan code, which is done actually in the section just prior under the plan development overlay. The plan development overlay, let me read a little section of that just to let you know that it is in the code, precluded in other areas, so that we could do it and we should do it, so that there's no question or concern on the part of the citizens that some person who was clever might be trying to slide something in under all those 4,000 pages that you get in the big developments. Let me read. For residential projects requiring open space shall comprise at least 30% of the total area of planned development. Land required for setbacks or occupied by buildings, streets, driveways, or parking spaces may not be counted in satisfying this open space requirement. So there you have it, in your code, in just a different section, where you exclude it. So what I'm asking the council to do, again, is to look at the specific plan and exclude that about parkland. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boydston. And I also have a comment card, and it indicates that they do not support moving the public participation portion to the end of the agenda. Important for the council to signal that the voices of all citizens are important and welcome. And I believe that was certainly made clear by Ms. Ender this evening. Thank you. Also would normally present these comments in person, but did not do so tonight. Okay. I was going to make comment about our moving the public participation portion later in the agenda because of also fairness and respect for people that have agendized items on our agenda that are here to be heard and present for those. And, you know, if they have go to work the next day as well, and I think that they need to be considered. And in all candor, we do have a lot of folks wanting to come forward. Obviously, this is a little bit of an exception with only 3 this year, 4 as it turned out. But it's probably difficult to be completely fair and it make everybody happy with the process. We had the public participation for years at the back of the council meetings, and we changed it approximately 3-4 years ago to the front. It is the prerogative of staff and council to make that adjustment, and I'm sure with those cities that have had it at the beginning, there's probably just as many cities out there with it at the backside. With that in mind, I will ask staff if they have further comment on the public participation. Ken?
If I could, Mayor, actually I did a little bit of analysis as to what cities do in terms of public comment, and basically they do everything you can think of. Some of it's 2 minutes, some of it's 3 minutes, some of it's 5 minutes, some's at the beginning, some's at the end, some's at the beginning and the end. It's whatever happens to work best for that community. But really the intent of this change is, as you indicated, Mayor, to allow people who've gone through the time and expense of getting an item on the agenda, make it so that their item can be heard at a reasonable hour. I also want to assure people this is in no way, shape, or form intended to limit people's ability to communicate with the city or the council. There are multiple ways to communicate with the city and the council. People can send us emails, they can call us, they can meet with us. We have communications all week long, not just during these meetings. The comment about Councilmember West, Councilmember West is not precluded from attending or communicating with the redevelopment committee. And with regard to the parking lots in open space, parking lots are necessary to access open space. I don't think anybody wants us to build a park without parking lots. Typically, the complaints that we hear in our parks is that they're underparked, not that we have too much room dedicated to parking spaces. People typically wish we had more of it dedicated to parking. So that concludes my comments, Mayor.
Mayor, I have one comment. I just want to make it clear to everyone that my home of 35 years in property does not, any part of it belong, or is it in the redevelopment agency of the city? Never was included. So I just want to make sure everybody was clear on that.
Thank you. Our next council meeting is October the 14th. I thank everybody for coming out this evening, and we stand adjourned.
Pregnant? Scared? Alone? Sometimes knowing where to go for help is half the battle. You want straight, honest answers you can trust. At the SCV Pregnancy Center, you'll receive the personal care and support you need to make informed decisions at this important time in your life. The choice is yours. Choose to know. All services are free.
Did you know the first gold in California was discovered right here in the Santa Clarita Valley, long before Sutter's Mill? Did you know our valley was the birthplace of the California oil industry? Did you know that when Los Angeles joined the rest of the country by rail, the tracks came together in Santa Clarita? You might know we're a popular location for filming, but did you know we always have been? Learn all about Santa Clarita's fascinating history at scvhistory.com or visit the Saugus Train Station Museum in Old Town Newhall, weekends 1 to 4.